The Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty has conjured a online interactive calculator. You simply select your school district. Actually, you're going to see what your school hit's going to be when that's the biggest part of your property tax bill if Act 10 goes away. And Kyle Keenan joins me on the program. It's different depending on where you are. Some areas of Wisconsin, tried to be good. And so the initial hit might be a little bit less. In some places in Wisconsin, spent to the max when they had the savings under Act 10. And so your hit's going to be huge.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Vicki. I think that's exactly right. So we released this calculator yesterday. If folks want to check it out, it's at will-law.org/Act10 calculator. But yeah, it is a story of a lot of different effects around the state, right? You're going to see some districts with massive impacts if Act 10 were to go away, with some districts not so much. But you can kind of look in some areas and really get a good sense of what that impact is going to be. So you look at a place like Watertown, you think a place that would be fiscally conservative, you're going to have over $1,800 impact on a $300,000 home. It's staggering numbers that we're seeing here.
Look at Beloit. Beloit's $2,493. Beloit. $2,493. I mean, mine's almost $1,000. $897 is what my hit is. I'm in Lake Mills. Madison was around $300. That's going to go up. But it's anywhere from about $300 to $2,500. Oh, and that's just nothing, right?
Exactly. And I think where you see some difference actually in some of the districts that are higher spending, they're not going to see as big of a hit when Act 10 if Act 10 were to go away, because they haven't taken full advantage of all the tools available. So you'll see in some districts that are more fiscally conservative that the impact is actually larger.
Yeah, it's going to be big. So what's the total calculated cost statewide? Just for, cost to keep doing exactly the same thing, you get nothing more for it. Do we have an estimated aggregate cost of the impact of repealing this law?
Yeah, so Will did a couple studies over the summer, and we found that for local governments and school districts combined, the overall savings from Act 10 on an annual basis is about $2.1 billion. So if that were repealed, you'd see likely a lot of those savings fall off. I know our friends at the McIver Institute have kind of done an aggregate of how much Act 10 has saved since its inception. And at this point, they calculate around $31 billion. So this is real dollars that we're talking about. And Wisconsin, you got to remember, Wisconsin's already a very high tax state. On the property tax side of things, we're at 8th highest property taxes in the nation. So without Act 10, that would have been worse. And I fear that if Act 10 goes away, it will be worse.
Well, and at the same time, we are continually and consistently one of the highest property tax states in the country, is also at a time when average housing prices are exploding, plus interest rates. So you want a recipe for running everybody to Florida, or anyone, any retiree on fixed income to Florida or Tennessee or Arkansas? This is it. Do this. And at the same time, and I just had Senator Nass on talking about the budget, we're talking about a $2+ billion tax increase if Tony Evers gets his way with the budget. So $2.1 billion for nothing, $2 billion again for no measurable benefit. That's $4 billion. I mean, that's a huge amount of money. Why would anyone who could leave stay?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And if you really want to look at the impact of Act 10 over the years, I think it's important. You can look at what the trajectory of property taxes was prior to its passage versus after. So this is a pretty staggering stat to me, is that in the 12 years prior to Act 10, school district levies were up 72%. Compare that to the 12 years after, it was 31%. Now, that's still high, right? I think a lot of that's from referendum and things that we're seeing around the state, but it really did put a cap on the increases that we were seeing prior to the passage.
Yeah. And by the way, when it was it was going up 72%, we weren't getting great results. And when it's going up 31%, we're not getting great results in terms of performance. Some of the other things Act 10 did. Act 10 allowed teachers to be selected based on merit and promoted based on merit. I mean, these are sort of hard things to measure and what their impacts were. But that goes away as well. So if you want to Brittany Kinzer has a great idea on how she wants to reform reading education and instruction in Wisconsin. Taking away Act 10 is going to make it next to impossible for anybody to touch that.
100%. We have to put focus on kids in the classroom, and I think a lot of the unsaid pieces of the collective bargaining agreements that the teachers unions negotiated before were things that would prevent important reforms like that from going into place. I think another one of the big benefits beyond just having public employees contribute more to their pension and their health care was Act 10 broke down the monopoly that WEA Trust had on health insurance in the state for school districts. So previously, the unions negotiated in their contracts that districts had to use the teacher union's chosen health insurance provider. And we find after the fact that they were charging 20 to 30% above market, right? So you take a district like Kenosha Unified, they got rid of their WA Trust health insurance. They saved $13 million in health insurance costs without changing benefits in 1 year just from that. And that's what we'll return to if Act 10 were to go away.
Yeah, it was a skim.
100%.
WEA Trust was a skim. That's what it was. They could mark up the price and slice off the gouged profit, and then do it all over again the next year. And that Act 10 disallowed putting policy items like that in collective bargaining agreements. It was another thing. Suddenly we've got things that alter state policy in collective bargaining agreements. Here's another one. Public employees by state law are supposed to pay 50% of the contributions to their retirement savings, not their retirement benefits, not the value of their retirement benefits, but the amount of money they put aside, state invests that they can retire on. That's in state law. Collective bargaining agreements took that state law and said, nah, we'll do 100% of your contributions for retirement. I mean, that's a change in policy, Kyle. And that is something that the Act 10 reform stopped. Because we, the voters, said 50%, and the collective bargaining agreement said go to hell.
Yeah, that's right. And I think when you really look at it, there are huge disparities. When you look at overall compensation for public employees prior to Act 10, they had really good benefits. They still have really good benefits. But when you compared that to the private sector, they were, significantly better, actually. I found that actually surprising. We found that while kind of doing some research on this, and Act 10 brought that into line with what average working folks around the state are experiencing in their own jobs.
So we just had Tony Evers want 1,300 more public employees and wants to expand benefits to limited term employees, part-time employees, massively expand benefits, massively expanding the cost of employment in Wisconsin. Again, it's already expensive to employ people in government in Wisconsin. They get all kinds of nice benefits that most people in the private sector do not. Certainly, part-time employees in the private sector do not. Now add Act 10 to that. Now add collective bargaining agreements to that. Now add, a corrupt, operation to jack the price of the cost of health insurance so that a favored company can get a skim. All of that comes back to Wisconsin. And again, I'm 56, going to be 57 soon. As my husband and I are looking at the idea of retirement, it would be dumb to stay here. It would be dumb to stay here in retirement, Kyle. And you make it, you right now, you put Act 10 back into play, and every senior who can will be in Florida faster than you can say rent a U-Haul.
Yeah, and it's not just seniors, too. That's the concern, right? If we don't make Wisconsin a more affordable place to live and do business, we're going to lose the next generation of folks that we need to, work in the manufacturing plants and doing things around the state that, provide value. And we really have to have a laser-like focus of getting some of these costs down so we can, attract people here and keep people here.
It will be California. We'll have wealthy people and poor people. That's what we'll have. You'll hollow out your middle class. You will hollow out the support structures for families. You will have wealthy people and poor people, and it will look like California without the nice weather, right? That's what we're going to get. California without the ocean, without the beautiful mountains, without the many days of sun, but the cost will be very similar.
That's right. And I think the reason, we decided to do this project to really see what the threat to Act 10 is there is this court case pending that's out there. And, Act 10's been heavily litigated. The court case that's pending before the appeals court right now has a lot of the same questions that have already been answered by both the state Supreme Court and federal courts. So there's a real threat to Act 10 going away. We know that if the legislature were to flip, we'd probably see an effort by leaders on the other side of the aisle and Governor Evers to eliminate Act 10 as well. And at the end of the day, it's actually hurting school districts and hurting the kids that are in the classroom learning. You're going to take away resources from the things that actually are going to the classroom to help kids.
But Kyle, and you know this, they already don't care about those kids. They already don't care about those kids, or nobody would tolerate 31% reading literacy in Wisconsin, which is a population of kids that are functionally illiterate. We wouldn't tolerate that. And so, but you're right. If you do care about kids, if you're one of the people who do care, you will very much care to try to protect and preserve this reform. Will-law.org, and it's available if you don't want to, use the whole URL. You can just go to will-law.org, and it's the very first thing that pops up on the front page, the splash page of your website. So, Kyle Keenan, thank you so much for coming.